Can I ask you to say that famous line from Nem?
Was it? What fate Amaroka?
It's awesome. My name is David Reed. I am here with one of the earliest guest stars from Stargate SG-1, Mr. Gerard Plunkett. Hello, sir. It is a pleasure to have you.
Likewise, pleasure to be here.
So you were a witness to this franchise when all was known was the feature film about it. They were nothing had even aired yet. What was it like being an observer to that creation all the way back then?
Well, you know, we chatted a little earlier, and I talked about just how striking the sets were and stuff like that. So, as an actor, you get into costume, and the costumes were, of course, strange and bizarre, and you had to kind of get your head around that, and the world you were to inhabit. But then, when you walked onto these sets, which were just some of them enormous and so striking, it was easy to play whatever it is you had to play in these beautiful places. They felt so real.
So it informed a lot of your acting choices?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
I mean, the temple scene in Broca Divide, there's this feeling of just this vast room, and you just feel kind of quite small in it. Next to those, were they bulls? They were bulls, right?
Mm-hmm.
These huge bulls. I remember thinking, wow, this is enormous, this is fantastic.
Take us back to how you discovered your craft. How old were you? What was your inspiration?
Well, I actually started in comedy. I started as a stand-up, and that was back in Ireland before I came to Canada. And then, when I came to Canada, I started to do more theatre, and that then into film and television, and then, and then it just kind of took off from there. So it wasn't like, a big conscious thing, I'm going to stop doing this and doing the other. It just was evolved from one thing to the other.
Any particular highlights from your theatre days of any characters that you played?
Oh, yes.
That stick with you?
Absolutely. Shelley Levine in Glengarry Glen Ross, opposite Eric McCormack, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
He played Roma, and I played Shelley. And we did that here in Vancouver at the Stanley Theatre. Henry Higgins I played many moons ago as well in the musical. That was a beautiful part to play. Lots of parts over the years have been really exciting and a pleasure to have done. So.
Anyone who's been on online television recently in the last couple of years will recognize you as a traveler. Mm-hmm. From the future, Brad Wright series Travelers. You came in, I believe it's season 1, and was it two episodes in season 1? I think the other one was in season 2. Wasn't it? You returned in season 2 the next year?
That's correct. It was season 2. Yeah.
You played a traveler who went into the body of a senator and had complete assurance in the computer program that was running the future, or running humanity into a certain direction in the first episode, and then in the second episode, your energy completely changed in that character, and it was someone who had kind of like lost his God in a way, who recognized that he was being sacrificed for something that was just like, it's just throwing me away. I thought I was supposed to be a part of this grand plan, and I am, but I have to give my life up. What a great part.
It was a great part, and I remember when that script came, because it wasn't one of these people, I'll take one for the team. Well, of course, he is taking one for the team, but he's not happy about it.
No.
So there's nothing about it that's kind of terribly gracious. he's gracious in the sense that he goes through with it. I mean, he does allow himself to be assassinated. But,
or was he going to have a heart attack?
Well, he was going to have.
That's the question.
Yeah, he was going to have the heart attack was given, but he wasn't amused by that either.
Yeah,
that was something that hadn't been looked into before he went into that host. So, So either way, he was fated to die, but he wasn't amused about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just it's an interesting example of a little micro example of the roles that some people have to play in the world. Some parts are bigger, some parts are smaller. Mm-hmm. So great couple of episodes there.
Thank you.
So your first appearance was in Broca Divide. Tell us about discovering who Tuplo was and this rather young pre-technology race of people who were living with a disease on their planet.
Yeah, I just remember the position of elder, if you like, or the fact that people needed me to solve the problem that I didn't know how to solve. So there was that, there was an element of dignity to that man. I remember that very much. His love for his daughter and so on.
She's basically dead.
Yeah. So it was a lovely part. I remember, and it was a pleasure to come back and play it again at a later time.
Yes, and Enigma, you return for one brief scene in your hat. You were mentioning earlier.
Yeah, and I did ask them about that because the hat was so extraordinary, and I did say, are we doing the hat? And they said, yeah, we're doing the hat.
We're bringing the hat back. Well, it's got to be like the equivalent of a crown or something. It looked like it was something to do with his status as counselor of these people.
Yeah, and I've had kind of a weird relationship with hats. I don't know whether you've ever seen the movie Seventh Son, but I play a character in that as well who has quite an extraordinary hat. But in one of the scenes there, which ended up not being used in the movie, unfortunately, but I did, find a way within the scene to get rid of the hat.
Get rid of it?
Yes, because of the action that was going on.
Oh.
But it was another hat thing, where you had this big hat in your head.
You have to start wondering, am I being typecast with
hats?
hats?
With hats. Give him a hat. He loves hats. Give him a hat.
But how about let's trade out the hat and give you a complete new face and neck and the whole works in Fire and Water. Yeah. A complete transformation. Did you audition for that?
Yes.
Were you asked to come back for that?
Yeah, I auditioned for that, and I remember that, and I think I remember the audition because if memory serves me right, I started the audition with my back to the camera, which was a choice that I made before I went in.
Okay. For the audition tape.
Yeah, for the audition in the room. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, got it. Okay.
Right. Yeah, in those days, the director producer would have been there too.
Okay.
So, which is great, right? I made the choice of having my back to the camera, and then turning with the first line, as opposed to kind of, and it just gave him that stillness, which I wanted him to have. That he was very powerful and didn't need to do very much. I mean, he literally holds his hand up and makes a sound, and you're toast. So, so that helped, I think, greatly. And I chose that kind of voice a little bit. Which was helped then later by the actual teeth themselves.
The teeth that you wore, those little sharp points.
Yeah, the prosthetic and the fact that I couldn't breathe very well within the mask through my nose, so you'd have to breathe, through the mouth. So it was, it all informed the character, but it was a lovely. I remember reading the couple of scenes that I saw in the beginning, and thinking, this would be fun to do.
Are you given the scenes where Daniel's trying to figure out what he wants?
Yes.
That's the what speech? Who are you?
Yes,
where did you come from?
Yeah. And Nem is getting increasingly upset because this human, is not delivering the goods for him. So, and in fact, in one scene, he goes off in a huff. He kind of gives up and heads out.
I kept the wrong one and let the other people go.
That's right. I get the stupid one. But it was great. I remember that scene on the beach where they first meet, and he puts the cuneiform on the sand, and then they kind of communicate that way, and that's where the decision is made to take Daniel, right, and leave the others.
Yeah, I think he takes them all and wipes their memory.
Oh, that's right, he does. You're
And
right.
then brings them back to the surface, because that's why they're all wet.
But he's the one that has he feels has the information.
Yeah. Tell us about the makeup process.
Yeah, that was long. That was about 3 hours in the morning. And probably, an hour in after wrap to get it all safely off.
Did you know going in what you were in for?
No, you never really know. No, you don't. You can't know because you've just no idea, really. You know it's going to be a prosthetic, but... And part of the process of that, of course, is the work that has to be done before, where you go to the studio and they put you in a full face mask, which takes a degree of calmness because it's like being entombed. So you kind of have to get into the headspace to do that. I remember doing I think that was the first full face prosthetic I'd done. So it was quite an experience, and then that's probably the most difficult part for the actor, I think, is having those molds made. And I've had full body ones done, which is just
talk about being entombed.
Yes, it really is kind of something, and you've got to find it in yourself to just chill, because it has to set to a certain level before they can successfully make them all. So. But I remember doing that, and then on a daily basis, you were probably 3 hours in the chair, I think, every morning, while these wonderful artists worked on the mask. So it wasn't just the mask, but then it was the very delicate painting and highlighting that went on, because there was a new mask every day.
Well, fresh
mask.
Wow!
Now
a whole series of them.
Yeah, because they had to cut you out. At the end of the day, you had to be cut out. So they would put, all the masks were made, and then they would be, the detail would be put in the course of the day, even just like they would to your normal makeup. If you had no prosthetic, they were always coming and touching it with a little bit of color here, a little bit of, shine or something like that. Whatever effect they were looking for on the mask. So. That was really interesting, and although by the end of the day, by the end of a 12 or 15-hour day of that, where you've had people touching you constantly all day, because they're
touching you up.
They're what do they call them? The lenses, the contact lenses, which I'd never had because I didn't even have to wear glasses back then. So it was having contact lenses, put in every morning was a huge deal, because you just weren't used to it. And then they would do that, of course, several times a day. They'd take them in and out to let your eyes rest and so on.
And
so
you had
it was
gloves
a process
as well.
The
Both
gloves,
your hands. You can't even touch yourself.
That's right. It was gloves. So and unfortunately, you're not really a fish, so you can't just go into the ocean. So certain functions need to be accounted for.
Oh my God! I didn't even think of this. Oh man!
Oh yeah. So you've got to get and you can't take them off yourselves.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
you need help.
So people have to help you get in and out of it all the time. Eating was a problem too, because you had.
Could the teeth come out during lunch?
Yes, the teeth would come out.
But the mask stays on.
But you had to be careful with the mask. You couldn't just have burgers or whatever. That wasn't going to work. So you kind of ate very daintily, just to keep the mask safe, so it would last for the whole day. Yeah, but it was. They were long days. They were hard days in that you're in this mask for all of those hours, and they were long days as I remember it. Yeah.
The relationship with Nim and Daniel, even though it is one episode, it is still one of the stronger connections. Well, they both have lost wives throughout the entire series. Did you and Michael get a chance to work together to find beats in the dialogue, or did you all just hit your marks and you went home? Was there any discovery together while you were working on the material?
I just, he's just such a lovely actor that, whatever you give him, he takes in and returns. So it's like, it's like playing tennis when you're with another good actor. It makes it very easy and exciting because no take is exactly the same. It can't be because and so they have a choice. Yes, I mean I remember those interrogation scenes very well, and because he was just so in pain in those scenes.
He's torturing the man on a table.
Yeah, so, and it was a. How shall I put it? He was a reluctant torturer, though.
Yeah.
So this is not somebody who's enjoying the fact that they're torturing something. He needs the information. But he's at the same time he's feeling for this creature who's suffering at his hands, and he finally turns it off or whatever. But I remember that scene being very emotional for both of us, I think, because it was just a hard scene.
Yeah, you're nearly killing him,
yes.
And the information that you've learned in the process is that I've been waiting around for 2,000 years for someone who's not coming home.
Yes, yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah,
and I think it informs one of the frustrations in watching the show and liking a character like yours was that sometimes it's once. And that's it. We don't get to see them again. There's a hope at the end that they'll establish relationships. Maybe they did. They probably didn't. Yeah. But, I mean, this is a culture who has been fighting this parasitic race for thousands of years. They're done. They're just not... They're not interested in working with humanity anymore. You can't really blame them.
Yes, no.
So, has anyone... have you done any particular sci-fi conventions where you've been recognized? Anyone say, "Oh, I recognize that voice"?
Yeah, I haven't actually done any over the years. I've always kind of missed out on that. And it's funny you should mention that because just recently somebody called me and said, would you like to do this convention? We're doing this convention.
Was it GateCon? Up here in Vancouver?
No, it's in England. I think it's in Liverpool or something.
Okay.
Like that. And apparently this year the Stargate is a
25th anniversary for the movie. We're celebrating.
Yeah, so there's an aspect of that in that. So there people are talking to my people.
Oh, okay. Well, so there's a chance that we may meet you out there in person.
I
okay.
mean, I may end up in Liverpool, which
that would be terrific.
Which would be nice. And so maybe the start of something beautiful, as they say.
When you look back on the work that you've done, do you get a sense of? Do you feel a sense of accomplishment of the roles that you have played? Is there anything that makes you say, you know what, that was particularly worthwhile, or that surprised me?
I had probably the most beautiful compliment paid to me some years. Alan Eastman, who directed that episode, a couple of years back. But Alan was in town, and so we went to have a little drink, and we were talking about that episode came up. And he said, whenever I talk to film students about prosthetics and the use of prosthetics, he said, your name always comes up. And I said, well, why? He said, because I could never understand how you could get so much emotion out of those eyes that weren't yours.
That's all you see.
Yeah.
And they're not even yours, yeah.
And so it was funny, but looking at it again last night, I thought, yeah, there is a lot going on in the eyes, which a lot more than I had suspected. I mean, you the actor, are behind the screen, if you like, acting, so you're not quite sure what's happening on the face of the character. But that was one of the loveliest things that someone could say, I think. And then, yeah. But I've had lots of parts over time that have been very rewarding, and yeah, you know, it feels like good work. Some stuff, you know, I never want to see again, but
Hey, sometimes some stuff is a paycheck.
yes,
You know?
but not only that, it's just because it's hard to make a silk purse sometimes, if you know what I mean. So, but if the script is good and the people are good, then you know, it's a joy. But when you're struggling with trying to make things real, sometimes that's difficult, I find. Yeah.
Any chance we'll be seeing you on screen again anytime in the future? Anything popping for you?
Well, you know, I haven't retired, so
Yeah?
yeah, that's always a good thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm always, there's always things coming and going. Some things work out, some things don't.
Yep.
And what I love nowadays is to write, and I write, you know, screenplays, I write stage plays, I do whatever, and the joy of that now, because the acting at this stage, you know, the bloom, if you like, is off the rose in terms of you know, being an actor. I mean, the joy of youth and all of that. So you get to a stage where your craft is your craft, and if people like you, then it's nice to work with them. But you're no longer trying to prove anything to anybody, and there's a great freedom in that.
I was going to say, it's got to be freeing.
Absolutely, because you really do.
Take it or leave it, guys.
Yes, really, because there's nothing, you know, you learn after a time that there's no point in thinking like that anyway. All you can do is what you can do. So you give the best you can. If they buy it, great. If they don't, then you move on. Writing, of course, is a solitary thing, but it's like acting in a way, because the characters, whatever characters you're working on, draw you in, and you're feeling whatever they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably even more schizophrenic than acting, in that you're drawn into everybody's dilemma or joy.
You're digging through a lot.
Yes, you're digging
You're
through
mining
a lot.
content.
Yeah, and there are days, you know, where you're struggling through a scene or something, and it's quite exhausting by you know, when the 8 hours is up, or however long you've been working on it, it's quite exhausting mentally. But I love it. I mean, it's the kind of thing where you can just sit down and the hours will pass, and you just, you know, enjoy. It's your own world, so nobody can tell you can't do that. Yeah. So that's nice. I like that.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it. It's so exciting to speak with people who were there when this franchise that we love so much was just getting its feet under it and still experimenting and trying to find itself. Yeah. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, I just want to say that even back then, when you know, all the experimenting, I mean, the skill of the people involved was extraordinary, you know, and it only got better over time. So it was, looking back, you know, it was a great thing to have been a part of, for sure.
Can I ask you to say that famous line from Nem?
What's that?
What fate Amaroka?
It's awesome. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to see you.
Likewise.
Thank you.